This is the Impunity Observer podcast. Fergus Hodgson, publisher and host. And I love doing these. And I want to thank everyone for both listening and subscribing. If you have not already subscribed for full access, go to impunityobserver.com. And this month, we're just zeroing in on the Canadian election or elections, since I struggle with the English and this sometimes because in Spanish we say elecciones. But anyway, so we have today a guest who is just my favorite kind of guest, the one who just shoots from the hip, says what he believes, and he's even paid a price for it, so you know he really believes in it. So his name is Jim McMurtry, and I've followed him for a bunch of years because he lost his role as a teacher because he had the audacity to say what he believed to be the truth about the residential schools in Canada. Now, I don't want to get too stuck in that issue because it's a big issue, but he said what he believed and he got fired, and now he's running as a candidate in the, let me get this correct, the Cloverdale Langley City riding or district in British Columbia. And for those who haven't been to British Columbia, it's one of the most beautiful places on earth. Great province. So close to Vancouver City. And so that took place 4 years ago now. Jim, obviously, I admire your stand, and I agree with you on the whole residential school issue. And if people want to learn more about it, I recommend they go to Frances Witterson. She's also spoken about this in great detail. But for the international audience, I really want to zero in on this, let's say, just moving status of Canada and the changing political landscape, because it just seems like the status quo cannot continue. Now, you have chosen to run for the People's Party rather than any other party. Did you consider another party?
No, because all the other parties, they put their candidates in the parade like elephants, and they just follow, are little ducks following the mother. They don't think for themselves, they don't speak for themselves, and they duck from all the issues that their leader doesn't want them to talk about. So I want to participate in my democracy and address issues that politicians are ducking from.
That is interesting because I mentioned this with Maxime Bernier, the leader of the PPC, that there's a very sheepish or tribal or conformist manner to Canadian members of parliament. It's so strange how I live in Colorado. I'm a Canadian citizen who now lives in Colorado. And in the United States, you have all these disputes among people within the same party, who will attack each other. And that's just normal. It happens all the time, it seems. Now, people might get angry about it, but in Canada, that just doesn't seem to happen. Now, has that led to the major parties being less accountable or less reflecting the constituents?
Absolutely. It's hard for me to make a quick comparison, but I will say this about Canada. The Prime Minister has all the power because anybody that wants to be in his or her cabinet has to do what the Prime Minister wants or will quickly be out of the cabinet. It's very much it's a superficially a democracy, but it's not as long as but it's for most of the time it's one person rule. And in Canada, we've had a long run of, I think, very good leaders. And I don't have anything horrible to say about a current leader, but he never was there to do anything that served ordinary Canadians. He was there to virtue signal, to first of all say how bad Canada is or was, so he can come along and say, no, now we've had Armageddon. Now that we've had all of Canada's history, I'm going to ride savior like in and make everything better. And that's how I got caught up in this. I couldn't believe all the lies that our government was saying, including calling ourselves the Canada genocidal state after the Cambodians and the Chinese and others because of a fictional story of mass murder in our Indian residential schools. It's pretty sad.
It's completely made up. It's ridiculous. And we see all the stories now coming out about how all the money to fund these investigations has just gone nowhere. It's basically disappeared. And people were so eager to portray themselves as morally superior without even having any solid evidence to work with. It's crazy. And look, I'm not a fan of government schools in general, and you've had your own experiences with these. But and my grandfather worked on a school on an Indian reserve back in the 1950s in northern British Columbia, and they were not there to genocide the Indians. I mean, it's insane. But anyway, so the PPC though, I know you get this question. It's a tough one. Why should people consider it over the other parties, right? Oh, because we always hear this talk about splitting the vote, and does that, do you take that seriously? Is it a legitimate concern to you?
Well, there are many different ways of looking at it. I ran previously, and when I was at an all candidates meeting, all the people running for the major parties in Canada, and only two parties in existence in Canada all through my lifetime have ever formed the government, the Liberals and the Conservatives, responds to every question, every single candidate for those parties has only ever, in my whole life experience, said, well, we think. And so we've lost the ability in this again. This we have the chimera of being a democracy, but everyone is just lined up behind their leader and afraid of saying something that's off script. So without a minority party, without different voices, then I think it's really rather tragic because there are all sorts of issues that, as I said earlier, politicians will duck from, and ordinary people like me will never be listened to. So to me, it's not about winning. I know it's hard to win outside of a mainstream party, but the only way my voice will ever be heard, the only way I'll have an opportunity to address issues that, again, the politicians are doing a sidestep from, is by running for a party that respects people's rights and freedoms, including its candidates. And in Canada, we have a few minority parties, and they're not going to form. They may not even get any candidates elected. They certainly won't form government. But I think they've become the lifeblood of the democracy in the Western world.
For mining stock recommendations, one newsletter I read is Global Analyst by Adrian Day, and I'm more than pleased to direct other people to his insights. Receive a 10% discount when you subscribe with the FERG coupon code. Go to adriandayglobalanalyst.com and click subscribe at the top right. You can also call the US phone number 410-224-8885 and mention the FERG code. That is adriandayglobalanalyst.com. You can also click the link below or in the show notes. Thank you.
You touched on many good topics there. One is this concentration of power in the Prime Minister's Office of Canada. Now, historically, Canada wasn't supposed to have an executive branch, right? The head of state was the royal leader, now the king in the United Kingdom. And we still have the Governor General in the both the provincial and Ottawa legislatures. But I know Mark Carney has used the equivalent of an executive order. Is this a continuation, do you believe, of this concentration of power? Will this be reversed or pushed back against?
Well, I just my way of responding to that is here's a guy who wasn't ever elected to be a member of parliament, all of a sudden prime minister. And if he's elected because he's got all the money behind him, because the Liberal Party has got a lot of money, and obviously it's been our national party because it's been in government much more than any other party. So that's what's wrong with the system. I even in this election, not only is again Mark Carney an unelected official, but I'm not going to be voting for him. Nobody is going to be voting for him who chooses to vote Liberal. They're voting for a party. So you vote for your local member of parliament. In other words, it's really not democracy at all if there's no directness to it. So we could have Mark Carney around for 10 years as our prime minister without anyone, again, directly voting for him. And so it's very frightening. And just to quickly say that his father was a great proponent of these Indian residential schools and of doing things to help our vulnerable community, where along with your obviously highly noble father. This Mark Carney has not honored his father by ever talking about the issue. So to me, the most appalling thing isn't just the fact that we've got this national shame, national hoax of being, again, self-anointed as a genocidal state for all these murders that never took place and all this bad treatment that never took place. These were committed Christian men and women who served in the schools. And So it's just outrageous to me that again our prime minister all of a sudden will no longer. All Trudeau did was talk about the minorities that were terribly treated by people who look like me, and then all of a sudden they've just moved away from that theme of the last 10 years, and they're pretending that they're great Canadian patriots hiding behind the flag, protecting us from the orange man in the United States. It's just such a bizarre departure from what the party has been these last 2 years, which is again, and Trudeau once rode into one of the reserves near the Kamloops reserve on a black horse to apologize to them. So this is very biblical, very savior-like. I think Trudeau uh, really does see himself as something larger in life than an ordinary politician. And I hope Carney isn't that reincarnation that we fear.
It is strange, actually, because you're right. Mark Carney's parents come from the same county in Ireland as my grandfather, County Mayo. It is strange, and yes, they went to teach in these very remote parts of Canada in very trying or difficult conditions, right? Just trying to get some opportunity. And obviously, Canada was a much different place back in the 1950s, where it was a great land of opportunity or of prosperity. Of course, things have changed so much now. Are you focused, though, a lot on, there's kind of an irony here. You're running for federal office, but are you focused on particular issues to your writing?
Well, absolutely, but I'm focused honestly more on myself. I'm in the sense that I'm a Canadian. My father was a Order of Canada recipient, Chief Justice. I inherited a love for my country and for a great appreciation of rights and freedoms. And so in my own case, the fact that I was fired 4 years as a teacher, speaking in an area where I have a PhD, it's an area of expertise for me. They walked me out because I'm not wanting to go along with one of many lies that have come from our government with regard to what happened with excessive COVID restrictions, what happened to the trucker convoy in which they passed the Emergencies Act, as though we are going to war in Canada against people who are simply trying to make a living as truckers. There's all sorts of examples in recent years where ordinary Canadians have recognized that their basic rights and dignity have been surrendered by their leaders. So when I say I'm running for myself, I'm running as a Canadian who believes that I, like other Canadians, have these rights and no one's going to get in my way. And I'm going to make it very clear to anyone that comes in my path that much of what our government has stood for in the last 10 years has been deceitful. And that has to end. So it's not about winning. I would like to win. I don't think that can happen because it's so much about organized party power and machinery and history and money and all these things. But I can certainly persuade Canadians to start asking for accountability from our elected officials.
Well, Jim, I really appreciate telling us your motivation, because I share that concern that Canada has been an admirable country in many regards and revered. As you know, the trucker convoy was a real turning point where the veneer was broken. Now, are you concerned that the bilingualism of the country has really made that concentration even worse? Because most people are not bilingual in Canada, of course, and they feel a little bit left out.
Well, I think Canada's strength is also its weakness. And it's more than bilingualism because where I live, the language that's predominant is Punjabi. So Canada is a land of immigrants. In some areas, again, there's very heavy concentrations. So it's really hard to say that there are two languages in Canada. There are many languages in Canada. And yeah, obviously that's eroded to some extent our sense of unity. But I don't blame Indigenous people for the lies about these schools. I don't blame recent immigrants for wanting to hold on to their culture and their language. I think the problem in Canada is we forgot why people come here and have for a long time. And just looking at you, Ferguson, seeing this beautiful design behind you, Canada is just an extraordinary place with so much water and nature, beautiful air, and just is spectacular. But we're a country of a land of the free and the brave. And don't tell people like me and other hardcore Canadians that all of a sudden that's lost because the people at the top of our society are going to put people who in the trucker convoy, or people like me who say, no, we're not a genocidal state, out of work. It's just not going to work. Canadians are rising. I think you're going to see it. It doesn't matter who forms the next government. Canadians are going to take back their country. And I mean Canadians, this mean anyone who cherishes, like I do, the right to be yourself, the right to speak freely. And as a teacher, the biggest problem in schools, and I think probably our whole society, is we can't do what we're doing right now. Talk freely. Everyone is so afraid. You said earlier, a beautiful term. You talked about, all the lies that come from government. So some people feel morally superior. That's all it is. You're absolutely right. It's just a way to put some people to put themselves up on a podium or a little bit higher than everybody else. And but we can't have a good world unless people are first, again, bequeathed with fundamental rights and freedoms. And I'm going to fight for those. And I'm going to do it through running in this election and probably in other elections. And I think a lot of Canadians, apart from who wins, a lot of Canadians are going to, again, they're going to seize their country back from these charlatans who pretend that Canada isn't about the people that live there. It's about making the politicians at top again into savior-like beings. They're not savior-like. They're a menace to us all.
Yeah, you refer to the natural beauty. I still remember as a child coming through BC and Alberta, just thinking it was the most beautiful place on earth, right? The lovely glaciers and lakes. It's incredible. So I don't want people just to give up on Canada. Now, aside from a broader reawakening, fueled by, let's say, independent media, social media, citizen journalism, are there structural changes to Canada that you believe would revive the best, right? We might say freedom in the classical liberal tradition, these virtues that made Canada attractive on a policy basis or on a constitutional basis.
I'm very much like Burke. I believe in that changes in a society have to be organic. I don't think you can do anything radically or quickly or dramatically. I think when I again look at the picture behind you, what you see is a land that's rough and wild and vast. And the first men and women that came here had to build roads and hospitals and schools and tame the land and make it into this country that we have today, this beautiful industrialized modern a democratic state. I just think that we have to reacquaint ourselves with our real history. I don't think it comes from changing laws or from separating different parts of the country or aligning ourselves with the United States as Trump has proposed. Anything. I think it just comes from people reawakening. Reawakening is to where do we come from? We come from a land of, well, you're saying your grandparents and others in your family, like mine, who came here and lived hard lives, but created something that was really special, where people are free and where people are safe and protected, including from their own government. So I think those people that smear our history and want to rewrite it again to serve their own woke agenda, they're the people that are in the way. And that's the best way right now, in immediate sense, to make Canada better, is to remember who we really are and stop listening to our leaders, who are much like the Pied Piper, who led children to their own ruin, led them away. I don't think we have to rediscover Canada. Canada hasn't ever left. And mentioned bilingualism. Well, part of my family's French. The French were the first Europeans here, but all people contributed to Canada, including people that are not yet here, that will be here tomorrow and a month from now, and so forth. All those people are deserving of rights and freedoms. And some of the horrible things that happen in other parts of the world where rulers destroy and kill their own people, that's never going to happen to Canada. But I think the big worry, though, is our leaders, because Canada, what we've experienced recently is a lot of people who want to manipulate our country, our institutions, to serve their own ends. And I think that's really very destructive. And they even use the word decolonialism or deconstructionism, but it's all the same thing. It's the D, take away from, to destroy. And you don't need to destroy Canada to break it down and build it up again. We don't need a reset. Canada has always been a great country and it will get better. We just have to stop the people who are nihilists who have led our country these last, particularly under Trudeau. We just have to remember who we are.
Right. And your role as a teacher has put you really in the belly of the beast. And as you mentioned, you have a doctorate in history, right? So you've also been part of the university world. And this is unfortunately where a lot of this, as you said, or anti-Canadian work goes on. Are you now a proponent more? I mean, this is getting away from your candidacy, but are you a proponent more of independent schooling, homeschooling, parallel institutions? Are you working on these projects in your day-to-day life?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm spending more than anything else in my life. I have to win my case. I want to have my livelihood back. I want to be back in the classroom, and I want other teachers to see that it's okay to speak the truth again. So I'm taking the punches for a lot of teachers, and I am going to win my case. So you've asked so many interesting questions there. I think our universities have discredited themselves. I don't really understand what their function is right now, other than to discredit our whole society. So I think choice is very important to me. I think anybody who wants to be schooled differently, who wants to learn differently, who wants to imagine his or her own life differently, I think that's incredibly healthy and important. So I support anybody who's living in pursuit of his or her own dreams. And I don't think we can trust the public system anymore, because we've seen what's happened. It's been centralized, where there's only one way of thinking. There's only one way of educating. And in the school system, it's being very much, again, manipulative of children. And I have a friend that's in Australia right now, named Billboard Chris, who's going traveling the world. He lives near me, and I know him well. And against the idea that forcing or encouraging or tricking kids into changing their sex, cutting out body parts, seeing themselves only as their race, seeing Western science as being invalid, seeing literature like To Kill a Mockingbird as being nothing but racist dross, revising our history, lowering our standards. All these things are a tremendous offense. So what I represent, I hope, more than anything else, and starting the moment 4 years ago, when people started talking about, in one school, 215 children being murdered, I was the first to say, no, that didn't happen. And I'm going to be the last on my feet on this. Now, I don't have to fight that battle anymore, because everyone knows I wasn't wrong. And Francis Whittleson and others along with me weren't wrong either. Right now, I think it's a broader fight. It's for, again, not only recapturing and reawakening to the real Canada, but to our, again, what we are bequeathed with, which is rights and freedoms. And if people want to be schooled differently and don't want to sit in a university and listen to some woke radical prattle on about things that have nothing that's of value for the students and for society, I think we need to create, as you talked about, we need to create different ways of educating and preparing our youth for their future.
Do you want to give people a quick update then on your case? You said it's been 4 years, and one, how they can support you, but two, what are the next steps in that case?
It's just been incredible. For 4 years, they've been slow walking my case, because they know I didn't do or say anything wrong. This was, again, up against a woke mob, and like the Rowan Atkinson or Mr. Bean said, it's like, this is what happens, that they chase you in the street and want to burn you for simply um, being different from that very low thinking mob. So I just am powerless. I can't do anything but just simply say no. And my union wants to drop me, and has forever, but I just turn around to them and say, well, then I'm going to sue you. And my employer threatens me more and more, and I say, go ahead, and I'm going to sue you. And then my regulatory body threatens me. And then at different times, different parties offering me money. And I keep on saying the same thing. I don't take money from anybody, so nobody can support me financially, because this is all done on principle. I'm one person, but I'm not going to be defeated. I said nothing wrong. And yet our whole system was lying about all sorts of things. And in particular, about early Canadian Christian teachers murdering children. As many as 25,000 children were murdered and secretly buried in these residential schools, according to people, and there's no evidence of a single child being harmed. Not a single child. There's only one priest that was ever convicted, and that doesn't speak about the system itself. That speaks about an individual. Most of the men and women that saw this as a higher calling. So I'm going to be the last man standing on this. So it could take years, because this is what they do: is they delay, and then they come up with new allegations, and then those will be seen to have no foundation to them, and it will go on and on. And so I think it's probably going to be another 3-4 years. And assuming that I'm going to go to court, and court cases can take forever. So I'm going to be dead probably before I'll be vindicated. But I think they're going to nothing. I think our whole Canadian society is going to think twice about going after decent, honest teachers like me again, because they're going to have paid a price, because they know that they were lying, and they know that they're all going to be exposed as people who did the worst thing ever that one could imagine. That parents send their children to school on the assumption that those children are going to be protected, and not only protected physically, but protected from the manipulation of bad actors. Kids deserve to know the truth about their past, and that's going to happen again in Canada. Truth will come back.
I was just looking at your X or Twitter account, and it has at the top, exposing false narratives. Jim McMurtry does not hold back. And man, I just really felt the passion you had there, Jim. So follow him on X. He's got almost 20,000 followers, because he is that man who just says the truth about what's going on in Canada. And so many people know it, but the thought police don't want him to share the truth, which is really very confusing as to why they feel that way. But his Twitter or X handle is Jim McMurtry01. Jim McMurtry01. And we'll have all the links in the show notes at impunityobserver.com, or if you're on YouTube, just click the link below. Please, if you're a long-time listener to the Impunity Observer or a new listener, do subscribe for full access. We appreciate your support, and I want to wish you best with your campaign, Jim. Thanks for giving us your time.
Thank you ever so much for this opportunity.